um, on First Encounters with Race and Racism. These are different links that I've used over the years when we've had classes that needed to discuss things. So I'm just going to leave them in there. Okay, so ethnicity. What about the difference between race and ethnicity? Did you guys discuss that in your classes? Do you remember? I don't want to put you on the spot. Generally, ethnicity does refer to classifications of humans based on a shared country or region of origin or a shared history and culture. And generally speaking, ethnicity is more, I guess, accurate, you might say, because it's more specific than race, which is generally just based on your physical appearance. So, for example, Cape Verdean, people from the Cape Verde Islands, Haitian, obviously people from Haiti. African American, this one is a little bit more nebulous because people in this country, if they can trace their roots to some country in Africa, which is a huge place, it's a huge continent, it's not a country, but that's kind of how the United States classifies people here. So we are going to leave it up there. But for the Asians, you can see that there's a lot of different ethnicities, and these are just three: Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese. There's also obviously things like Hmong, Cambodian, Indian, even Asian Indians now are considered part of the Asian category, but they are generally referred to as South Asians. These are generally, Chinese and Koreans are usually referred to as East Asian, and then like Vietnamese, Lao, and Cambodian and Hmong people are Southeast Asian. So there's all these different ways you can cut the categories of race into ethnicity or different ethnicity groups. Also, same with Native American. Native American is a big category as well that encompasses pretty much anyone in who can trace their lineage back to the indigenous peoples of North America. So those are the Cherokee, the Mohawk, Navajo. Those are just three examples of some of the tribes that Native Americans could belong to. Here in this country, we kind of lump them all together and call them Native Americans. But if you were one of those in one of the tribes, then I'm sure you would first identify as a Cherokee or as a Yurok or as a Navajo, whatever it is, first, and then maybe Native Americans second. Same with Asian Americans. You would probably categorize yourself as a Chinese first, and then you can say, oh, well, I'm Asian American in this country. If you were in China, there's no way you would consider yourself Asian, right? Because that's not a thing. It's only a thing when you get to the United States, which speaks to the whole social political construction of these categories in the first place. Same with Latino. That's a very large category that could include a wide variety of people from different places: Cuba, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Bolivia. It could include a ton of different countries, right? But here in this country, they all kind of fit under this category of Latino. And same with white. Right now, anybody who generally is from some place in Europe is considered white. But as I said back in the day, Polish people were not considered white. Irish people were not considered white. Swedish probably were always considered white. As well, because they're kind of in those Anglo-Saxon areas. So really, very nebulous ideas about race and ethnicity that are basically socially reinforced. That we continue to use these, and they're all institutionally reinforced as well, because when you check off some kind of government document, right, when you entered the school, when you applied, you probably had to check off some kind of form of what you were. And many times you're only given, maybe 4 or 5 boxes. And if you don't fit in those boxes, then, too bad. Now, there's generally a write-in option, but that wasn't always there. And depending on the times, your option might not be there. Like, I remember the Asian box was not there before maybe like 1980, some places 1990. It was usually white, black, Hispanic, or other. And that's because Asians were not very numerous in this country, so you have to get to a certain number apparently to get that box on these forms. Unfortunately, that's how it is in the United States. So indigeneity, this is a hard word to say, indigeneity is a classification that generally refers to people in a territory that they once occupied or owned and that has since been taken over through conquest, colonialism, and or genocide. Usually all three are involved when we're talking about indigenous people, unfortunately. Because to even have this status means that somebody came and took your land away from you, therefore you have to claim that this indigenous status. Before anyone came, you just lived there, right? That was just your home. That was your place where you lived, and you didn't necessarily have to think about it. But once it was taken away from you, that's when you suddenly get this label of an indigenous person. And these people are now, you can find them pretty much all over the world because of the way that Eastern European expansion or European expansion went, where generally the English, the French, the Dutch, the Germans, those are the main, or the Portuguese also, the Spanish and the Portuguese, went all over the world and conquered all of these lands in the 1700s to early 1800s in the name of, trying to conquer the world and claim all this land for the Kingdom of Spain or the King of England or the Queen of England, whatever it is, was kind of that period of this land grab. And so in New Zealand, the indigenous people now are known as Maori. Mexicans are in territory now defined as parts of the United States, could be considered indigenous, and of course Native American tribes anywhere in the United States pretty much could be considered indigenous. And this is not just here, and this happens in other countries as well, even in like in Taiwan, where they were conquered by the Chinese coming over. There's indigenous Taiwanese people. In pretty much anywhere you go, you'll find indigeneity as a name for the people who were once living there and were now living in land that was taken from them. So the UN definition of indigenous means, among other attributes, is that such peoples are, quote unquote, formally placed under a state structure which includes national, social, and cultural characteristics alien to their own. Basically, they got taken over, right? And they were now forced to live under this new set of laws, this new culture, this new social norms that never existed in their land before. And that's this concept of indigeneity. And even right now, if any of you are following the news of what's going on in Hawaii with the whole protests over Mauna Kea. Have you guys seen these? So the University of Hawaii, which is I guess, seen as a colonist and a conqueror in Hawaii, want to put an 18-story building on the top of Mauna Kea, their tallest volcano in the islands. And all of these Native Hawaiians are protesting because they're saying that this is their sacred land, that they are all born of this volcano. That's their belief, that is kind of the motherland of Hawaii. And to put this 18-story building on top of this beautiful mountain is basically desecrating their culture, desecrating their birth mother, basically. And so that's a huge thing that's been going on for the last couple of months now. It's been going on for a while. Because the government is backing University of Hawaii for the rights to put this building, and it's a giant telescope that they're fighting over. There are already, I think, 18 telescopes up there, but now they want to put a huge one. And so now the indigenous community is really protesting that. So these kinds of things happen all over the world. Even today, they're still going on. So culture, what is culture? Culture is the collective programming of the mind, which distinguishes the members of one human group from another. So again, programming of the mind goes back to a social construction, a social and political construction. But it also is something that's learned, it's collective, learned. It's also slow to change, and it could be contradictory. It's based on these main things: your beliefs and how your attitudes are tied to your beliefs, your values are tied to your beliefs, and your behaviors are all tied to your core beliefs. And it says that it's collective, learn, slow to change because these things are passed down through generations, right? They're passed down through your family, they're passed down through your community, they're passed down through your religion. All of these things shape humans, what humans believe in, and therefore their attitudes, values, and behaviors also kind of are rooted in these beliefs. And these are, they're hard to change because humans, once you believe in something, it's hard to change that. And because it becomes so ingrained as part of you, that's just how you operate. And you don't even think about it many times. And so that's why all of these things is hard to do. But then contradictory, because some things, they're hard to resolve. The ways that people believe in things and maybe their behaviors are maybe not quite in line with one another. And that's because there's other things that influence the ways that you behave, your attitudes and values, not just your culture. That is one core of it, but of course there are other things around us. So there are things like the shifting social norms, and things like, I don't know, even as something as, not trivial, but surface level as like tattoos, for example. In many cultures and many traditions, only certain people could get tattoos, and you could only get it after you maybe accomplished something or you achieved some sort of status, and that's what gave you the right to have a tattoo. Now, anybody and their mother and their grandmother has a tattoo, and people don't bat an eye, right? Because it's just something to decorate your body. But in many cultures, that is not something that you can just go out and pay, whatever a tattoo costs, and get something on your skin. And so so in many ancient cultures that do ascribe to the belief that you have to do X, Y, and Z before you get a tattoo, some of the youth today might say, I don't want to do all that. I just want to get my girlfriend's name or something on my arm. That would be contradictory to their culture. Yet, because they live in the modern day and age, where we no longer have to, fight with one another with spears and whatever to prove your masculinity. Then that's where you see that there's some contradictions in cultures. And as anything else, culture evolves as well. It might be slower to evolve, but it definitely does evolve. Okay, cultural generalizations. These are principles, statements, or ideas just having general application. And in the dictionary, it just says to infer or draw inferences or general conclusions from many particulars. And in the ways that cultural generalizations are made are when people just look at you and make these snap judgments based on the way you look. That, whatever, you must be Mexican because blah, 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 blah. Or you must be Chinese. They look at me and say that. I know a lot of students at this school who are not Chinese because most of the Asian students in this school are Southeast Asian, mostly Hmong. A lot of times they get, oh, you must be Chinese because you look Chinese, and they get very upset because they are not Chinese. That's when people are making these cultural generalizations, when they assume that because you look the way you do, the way that I look, that I must know Kung Fu, or I must eat rice every day, or I must know the best Chinese restaurants, which I do, but but just because you look this way is what. So no, don't make cultural generalizations like this based on people's appearance, because that then leads to stereotypes. And stereotypes are generally what follow when you make these generalizations. And that's leading to these very oversimplified ideas about what a person or a group of people must be like. Because they're considered to be typical, they have to conform to this kind of pattern, and they're not necessarily individuals, right? And that's kind of where this is where people get in trouble, where they automatically make these assumptions about people, much more damaging than, you must know where the good Chinese restaurants are. But more so things like, even like personal characteristics that, Asians are very quiet, and so they must not ever speak up, or they don't speak English very well, or they all are doing really well in school and don't need help, right? These are all kind of